everyone. Welcome to the Arm Coach Podcast, episode 116. So, can I ask you something kind of personal right now? Do you have a moment in your past that you keep replaying? Maybe it was a summer where you completely let yourself go. Maybe it was a decade where you stopped showing up for yourself and you look back now and think, what was I doing? Maybe it's the fact that you used to be in better shape, you used to care more, you used to try harder, and now you're sitting here thinking about how you blew it. Well, if that landed anywhere in your body just now, this episode is for you. Because here's what I know about you: you have tried before. You have started arm routines, fitness programs, clean eating challenges. You've had really good weeks, followed by weeks where everything fell apart. And somewhere along the way, you started collecting evidence against yourself. Evidence that you are the kind of woman who doesn't follow through. Evidence that your body doesn't respond the way it used to. Evidence that you probably just don't have what it takes. And every time you look at your arms and feel embarrassed, or you skip a tank top because you're self conscious, or you avoid a photo, that evidence gets a little louder, a little more convincing. But here's what's wild though: most of you are not actually living in the present when it comes to your body. You're living in the story that you wrote about yourself 5, 10, 20 years ago. And that story is running your life right now. And so we need to talk about that, because the thing nobody tells you about shame, you think it's keeping you accountable. You think that if you feel bad enough about how you've neglected your body, how you've let things slide, how you've stopped trying, eventually that shame will shock you into action. But shame doesn't build toned arms. Shame builds hiding. Shame is why you wear the cover up at the pool. Shame is why you cross your arms in photos. And shame is why you start a new program fired up on Monday and quietly abandon it by Thursday, because some part of you already decided you're not really the kind of woman that does this. So women over 50 are not struggling with consistency because they're lazy. They're struggling because they've been carrying around a story about who they are that was written during their hardest chapter. And they've been using that story as proof that change isn't possible. That's the real problem. Not your bat wings, not your age, not your flabby arms, the story. So let me define something real quick, because I love getting specific. So a story is an account of a past event, an account, which means there can be other accounts, multiple versions of the same moment. Your version is not the only version. It's just the one you've been running on repeat. And here's where this gets important: the past doesn't exist in your body. It doesn't exist in your arms. It only exists in two places: words on a page or thoughts in your mind. What you believe your past means is just a series of thoughts. And those thoughts are creating how you feel right now, today, in this moment. The real reason, the reason you feel stuck when you think about your past failures is not because the past is heavy. It's because the thoughts you're thinking about the past are heavy. And that's the cycle. And we can interrupt it. But before we go any further, I want you to pick a moment, just one, a specific time in your life, maybe around your health, your body, or your arms, where you think, if only I could have done that differently. Maybe it's a season of your life where you really let yourself go. Maybe it's the moment you stopped going to the gym. Maybe it's a period of time where you look back and cringe. So, do you got that? Hold it, because we're going to work with it. We're going to work with it. And there's another piece of this that I want to share with you, something a little more personal because I think you need to hear it. When my kids were young, I was doing it all alone. Single mom, full-time job, running a household by myself. And I was completely exhausted in a way that I don't even have words for. Like, I was not just tired, I was depleted, like bone empty. And I had this ritual that I am not proud of. I would put my kids to bed early, like earlier than they needed to go to bed. Not because they were tired, but because I needed quiet. I needed to not be needed for 5 minutes. And then I would sit on the couch and I would eat mindlessly, emotionally, like desperately eat chips, cookies, whatever was in the house. And not because I was hungry, because it was the only thing that felt like it belonged to me, the only moment in the day that was mine. And then the shame would come. And it wasn't just shame about what I ate, it was shame about who I was. What kind of mother puts her kids to bed early just to eat chips alone on the couch? And I used to replay those nights over and over. If only I had been stronger. If only I had more discipline. If only I had been a better mom, a better person, a more together woman. And that shame followed me for a long time. Even as I started to feel better, right? Even as I started building real habits, even as I started becoming someone who actually followed through, I still had this pocket of if only in my chest. And maybe you have one too. Maybe yours is about the years after your divorce where you stopped caring, or the decade where you prioritized everyone else and your body paid for it. Or the summer, you look back at photos and think, how did I let it get that bad? That pocket of shame is what we're working with today. So here's the part that will probably make you uncomfortable. Suffering about your past right now, it's not helping you. I know. And I know that feels wrong because somewhere we were all taught that if we felt guilty enough, if we hate ourselves hard enough, if we hold ourselves accountable in the most punishing way possible, we'll finally get our act together. But accountability was never supposed to mean self attack. And here's what actually happens when you beat yourself up about your past: you feel shame. And when you feel shame, you hide, you shrink, you pull that cardigan tighter over your arms, you skip the workout because what's the point anyway? You eat the whole sleeve of crackers because you already feel like garbage. So why not? Shame doesn't create the toned, confident woman you want to be. Shame creates the woman who is too exhausted to try again. The women over 50 who have strong arms didn't shame themselves into it. They shifted their story. That's the whole game. So, where does the past actually live? Think about ancient Rome for a second. It existed, it was real, tremendous things happened there. And now it lives in history books and in ruins and in thoughts about what once was. You can't go back and change a single thing about ancient Rome. It is as done and over as done gets. Your past is ancient Rome. That couch, those chips, that summer you stopped trying, that decade where you didn't lift a single weight, all of it done and over with, fixed, finished, unchangeable. The only place it exists now is in your thoughts. And here's the radical part: your thoughts about the past are optional. The story is not fixed, only the facts are fixed. The meaning you make of those facts, that's entirely up to you. And that is where story editing comes in. So let me walk you through this exercise, and I want you to stay with that moment that you identified earlier, the one where you think, if only. So here's the first thing I want you to do. Write down how you currently feel when you think about that moment, not the event itself, but how it makes you feel right now in the present, because this is important. The negative emotion you're experiencing is happening now, not then. It's happening in your current body because of your thoughts. Name the emotion: shame, disappointment, regret. Now ask yourself, what am I doing because of this emotion? Because this is where midlife habits either serve you or wreck you. If you feel shame every time you think about your past fitness failures, you probably aren't lacing up your sneakers. You're probably scrolling. You're probably avoiding the mirror. You're probably wearing the cardigan, because shame creates hiding, not arms that you feel proud of. Now, here's the next question, and really sit with this one. Okay. How do you think your life would be different if you could have that do over? So get specific. Don't just say, I'd be in better shape. What would you actually be doing? How would you feel about yourself? What would you be wearing? Would you be booking that beach trip? Would you be raising your hand in meetings? Would you be signing up for that 5K? Write down the specific feeling you'd have if you had gotten it right back then. Now, for my clients, it's usually some kind of version of proud, confident, like I followed through, like I can trust myself. And then I want you to ask yourself the most important question of this entire exercise. Why isn't that feeling available to you right now? Because here's the part that changed everything for me. When I finally did this work around those nights on the couch, I had to get honest with myself. I had to stop playing the if only game and actually look at what was happening. Because when I got still and really looked at that exhausted single mom on the couch, I saw something different than what I had always seen. I didn't see a bad mother. I saw a woman who was doing the absolute best she knew how to do with the tools that she had. A woman who had nothing left to give by 8 p.m. and who found the one thing that gave her 5 minutes apiece. A woman who was surviving, not failing. Now, that reframe, it didn't happen overnight, but when it did, it broke something open in me. And I wanted to break something open in you too. The stories we tell about our past are so personal, they're so specific, and they feel so true. Maybe yours sounds like, I was so lazy. I had no discipline. I always quit. I let myself go, and now look at me. I should have figured this out by now. And here's the thing, those thoughts feel like facts. They feel like accurate descriptions of who you are, but they're interpretations. They are one account of what happened. And by accounts, by definition, can be rewritten. Women over 50 who finally get consistent with their fitness, who finally start feeling good in their bodies, who finally stop hiding their arms, they didn't suddenly get more motivated. They didn't discover some magical arm workout. They didn't get more time or more energy or better genetics. They changed the story they were telling about who they are. That's the whole shift. Identity change over motivation every single time. Okay, so here's a bold thing that I want to say, and I need you to really hear it. The version of you that ate chips on the couch, that skipped workouts for a year, that stopped trying for a whole season of life, that woman was not weak. She was human. She was doing what made sense given what she knew, what she had, and what she was carrying at the time. We have been sold this version of fitness that says if you struggled, if you fell off, if you quit, it means something is fundamentally broken about you. And that narrative is keeping women stuck at exactly the moment in their lives when they have the most capacity for real lasting change. You're not behind. You didn't blow it. You were living a human life with human limitations and making human choices. And now you get to decide what you do with the chapter you're in right now. So here's the story editing question that I want you to sit with. If you could step into the shoes of a compassionate observer and look back at that moment, that season, that chapter of life where you feel the most shame, what might that observer see that you have not allowed yourself to see? What did you learn? What were you protecting yourself from? What strength did it take? What strength did it take to survive that chapter at all? For me, that exhausted single mom on the couch was protecting her sanity. She was carving out the only peace she knew how to find, right? She was surviving something really hard. And the silver lining is that she eventually learned there were better ways to take care of herself. That knowledge became the foundation of everything that I teach now. Your chapter has a silver lining too. Maybe you learned what depletion feels like, and now you know you'll never let yourself get there again. Maybe you learned that nobody was coming to save you, and that was actually the most empowering truth you could have ever discovered. Maybe the season where you stopped taking care of yourself is exactly what woke you up to the fact that your standards matter. The experience, it wasn't a waste, it was data. So here's where story editing gets practical, and I want you to write this down. Ask yourself, if you could choose any story to tell yourself about that past event, any story at all, which one would you choose? Now, I know this feels weird, maybe even dishonest, like you'd be making something up. But here's the truth, you're already making it up. Every story you have about your past is an interpretation, a lens, a filter through which you decide what the facts mean. The version where you blew it and wasted years and have no discipline, it's not more true than a version where you were a human woman doing her best and eventually found her way. The question is which story is actually serving you? The story where you blew it keeps you on the couch. The story where you learned something and now you get to choose differently builds arms you don't hide. Naturally toned women are not built through motivation or punishment. They're built through the decision made over and over and over again to be someone who follows through. And you can't become that woman while you are still being tortured by the old story. You have to edit the story first. Then you build the arms. So I want to pause here and give you something to actually do with this. After this episode is over, I want you to grab a journal and write out your answers to these questions. What is the moment or season from your past that you keep replaying? The one where you feel the most shame about your health, your body, your arms, your habits. How do you feel right now when you think about it? What are you currently doing because of that feeling? If you could have a do-over, how would your life be different? Now be specific. Now step into the shoes of a compassionate observer. What did you learn from that season? Was there a gift, however small, hidden in it? And then finally, if you could choose any story to tell about what happened, a story that actually serves the woman you're becoming, what would that story be? So write it down, because the story you tell yourself about your past, it's either building you or it's burying you. And you get to decide which one. So here's what I know to be true after years of coaching women over 50 on their arms, their confidence, and their identity. The women who finally get there, the ones who stop hiding their arms, who go sleeveless without a second thought, who feel genuinely proud of the body they're living in, they all had a moment where they stopped using the past as evidence against themselves. They rewrote the story, not because they suddenly loved everything about their history, but because they decided the old story, it wasn't worth the price they were paying for it. Missing workouts in the past doesn't mean anything about who you are now. A decade of neglect doesn't mean you're too far gone. And slow progress doesn't mean nothing is happening. You're not behind, you're not broken, and you're not too late. You are a woman in the middle of building something, of becoming something. And the fact that you're here listening to this, asking these questions, that's not nothing. That is everything. This is how the naturally toned woman is built, not through punishment, not through shame, not through starting over every Monday and hating yourself a little more each time. Through self-trust, through simple habits, through a story about yourself that actually has room for who you're becoming. Keep showing up, even slowly, even imperfectly, even on days when your arms still make you want to hide, because this is the long game and you're built for it. So if this episode hits you, don't just keep it to yourself. Women who are changing their lives don't just listen quietly, they engage, they speak up, they follow through. So if you've been listening to this podcast and it's been helping you see yourself differently, I want you to take 2 minutes and leave a review. Not for me, for the woman who feels exactly like you did before you found this. And as a thank you, I'm gifting a $100 gift card to one of you who leaves a review this month. All you have to do is leave the review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Take a screenshot and send it to me at Kristine@KristineRucker.com. So this is your moment to stop being a silent listener and start becoming a woman who shows up. I'll see you next week in the next episode.